Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, a podcast devoted to helping you overcome challenges in your life that prevent you from becoming the best version of yourself. Each episode features interviews with people from all walks of life about their journey of self-development and the principles they utilize to overcome their fears to achieve their desired outcome. Ready to be enlightened? Here's your host, Ken Primus.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. It is my honor to have Steve here because I want to stop first and welcome him and thank him for coming and share a couple of things that he has that I deem very expensive. His time, 24 hours, has been offered to mankind. Every one of us have this wonderful gift. I invite those that are about to listen to this podcast, become a friend of time, understand her. She is powerful. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It created Steve. It took him through this, for lack of a better word, development of self. And it deposited a couple of things inside of him that we want access to. What are those things? Wisdom, knowledge, insights, all of those wonderful things that are resided in him. And we want to honor him and thank him for coming and sharing both of these precious commodities. Steve, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you, Ken. Really glad to be here. Thank you.
It is an honor, man. That question that I wanted to level at you, as I always tell people, it's based on the second part of our journey, our assignment that we have. And my question to you is, how do you serve mankind?
It's a great question. It's one that I try to ask myself every day because this is kind of the answer, isn't it? And the question is the answer, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I would, like you, was in the corporate world. I still am. I work in the corporate world. I work in the nonprofit world. I work in all these different spaces. And so I used to think that my assignment, what I was there to do, was to achieve these goals, right? But having gone through this journey so far of life, it became very, very apparent after trial and error and pain and loss that the assignment is love and kindness.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. And as we go through our lives, part of my focus and what I want to share with people that I meet on this journey is that we got to start with ourselves. And that love and kindness has to be inward first before we can go outward. So one of the things I learned in this journey, which really helped me latch onto this, is that all the forces of the universe conspired to create me, and therefore I am worthy. And if we stopped right now and everyone listening in your audience just took that away, that would be it. That would be enough for me, because that's something that I had to learn and go through this process. But by doing so, I was able to let go of the stuff that wasn't serving me or serving other people in my life. So I think that's probably a long-winded answer to your question, but that assignment and that focus is really about love and kindness and sharing that message that we are worthy.
Yeah. One of my advice that I've always said, and I remember when I went through my journey, Steve, and I began to see who I was and the preciousness of who I was, I started getting the revelation that there are industries based on how unique we are that are out there. So if we weren't so unique, there would be I don't think anyone would be solving any crimes, would you? Because we all have our fingerprints are different. We have our voice recognition. Facebook would be nothing because we have face recognition. We have all these other recognitions out there that are based industries that are simply based on how unique we are and how special we are.
Yeah,
and
I love
it is
that.
a shame that the programmers don't spend enough time to let us know how precious we are. So here you are, Steve. One of the things that I always start at I call them these locations that we visit as beings new to this planet. The first location is where the family is located. That's where they tell us that these strangers that we don't know anything about. And we call them mom and dad and, all those different things, titles. But some of us are lucky to have siblings and so forth. But this space right there, Steve, we're going to learn a couple of things. We're going to learn about habits, the way by which we think, how we process our thoughts, how we communicate, all of these things right here it is the beginnings of our beginnings, if you will. What was your family unit like, Steve?
So I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then Asheville, North Carolina. And I have two brothers, one older and one younger, and mom and dad. And my father is recently passed on, and my mom is still trucking along at 89 years old, and she's kind of like, she calls herself a Sherman tank. She's one of those people, when she walks into the room, you know she's there. And so I had that's kind of the group of the family. And so my brothers and I grew up in a really interesting time in Charlotte. We had a childhood that was in many ways, it was really free and wonderful. We spent a lot of time outside and
Yeah.
with other friends, and it was really some great memories there. It seemed to be a lot less hassle and confusion and stuff in the world.
Yeah.
I think as you get older, we often hear people as they get older reminiscing about their time as a child. It was a lot less, it was a lot different, you know. And so, but yeah, so that was my family, and my two brothers and I are still very close, and we talk quite a bit about life and our own journeys, and try to support each other on those journeys, which is really important.
Yeah, that is a gift, Steve, because not many siblings are that route that you and your brothers have, because many of them are estranged from each other and so forth, and not understanding the value of those phone calls about reminiscing and how it strengthens bonds and stuff like that. I was one of those kids, I think. We played more outside than we ever were inside. We were never inside. So
Oh no.
we were let loose, and that was it. And there's a degree of, for those of us that grew up in that, there's a degree of self-assurance. There is a degree of where we felt that we can do anything and not be bothered that we did not. So here you are, you're growing in there. Steve, what was your relationship like outside of the home? Because as I mentioned, one of the things that we do develop is our communication skills with self and others. What was in your mind's eye, if you will? What did that look like, Steve, coming as a young individual on this planet?
Well, I think one of the things that we talk about, and parents do this, and I think my mom and dad were pretty intentional about the environment that we grew up in and the values that we had. And so there was always a sense of service. There was always a sense of, we're here to be a part of this community. And our one of the things we want to do is recognize, well, what are our strengths and our gifts, and how do we serve the community that we're in? So I think that was a real big part of who they were and what they believed, and that was imprinted upon us. So our natural different strengths, I guess, or gifts started to emerge as we were children. And my two brothers and I we're all very different. We have similarities, but we are all very different in what those are. For me, it was trying to, I guess, shout out things that I saw that I didn't think were right, or that would be harmful to other people. So, and I think that was a part of my parents as well, is that when we see something that was not just part of the serving the community and supporting others, is to call that out. So there was two things there. One was being loving and supporting of other people, listening and holding people up. The other thing was calling it out and having the courage to step up and say, hey, this is not right. And that has really informed the way that I approach life in terms of leadership as a leader and working with other people, working with executives and leaders now. That's one of the things that I have been evolving and in doing some writing and speaking around, is this idea of authenticity around those two concepts, which is supporting others, building the trust, the rapport, listening, holding people up. And that's one big key component, I think, of authenticity. The other one is challenging, holding up the mirror, providing feedback, letting people know when they're off target and on target. The third component of that, though, which I think is really interesting, is letting go. And, when we lead and manage others in organizations, we do those two functions very well. We support people, we listen, we help mentor people. We also challenge people, help them learn. We make sure that we have those two things. And those, for the most part, we try to balance those out, I think. Some of us do one more than the other. But the letting go piece, I think, is really hard. And that's the reason that's hard is it takes a bit more of a journey. It's not it's more of an inward thing. It's not a discipline that you can take a self-help course or read a book or take a leadership course and learn how to let go. That has to come from within. And letting go is based on forgiveness. And that's why I think it's so difficult for us to let go with ourselves and other people. So that those are some of the things early on. I think those values that we were exposed to and latched onto and internalized, and of supporting people in the world, trying to be a force of good, but also having the courage to raise the mirror up, were the really fundamental, I guess, in my childhood and my development.
Yeah, I think that's powerful stuff, Steve, because one of the reason why I ask these questions, Steve, is because so that we can discover, if you will, the threads that are in us, and it follows us all the way through. And it's amazing how those threads, if you will, once we take a peek at it and through conversation, we'll see how it follows us, and it causes us to develop certain perceptions. And these perceptions are what we use and become our belief to guide us in our life and cause us to respond certain ways and so forth. So once you so eloquently express that thread that you had as a young individual, and how it led you to where you're at, and how it's fundamental now in developing leaders and so forth. And so it's a powerful thing to see how that thread in that young man is so prominent in this grown man's life, in his approach to how he shows up, if you will, and navigate through life. Here you are, those are powerful stuff that you talked about, that you're able to receive from mom and dad, if you will, beautiful souls that were able, the Sherman Tank and dad, just
well, he was Buddha, man. Dad was the guy who was just he walked into a room and everybody wanted to sort of gravitate to him, but he wasn't loud. He wasn't one of these people who said, "Look at me." But everybody wanted to be in his presence and get what he was giving out. And but I often said to him, I said, "Man, you're Buddha. You've got to be one of these reincarnated Buddhas from Tibet or somewhere." And he would just smile, turn away and walk away, which is just classic. It'd like reaffirm what I would say. And he'd go, "Oh yeah," walk away. "Yeah, you are, man." So
that's beautiful, man.
He's a funny
guy.
guy.
Those are, Steve, those are the ones that are pretty strong individuals, that they don't have to say much. They just walk into a room and everyone knows that this is someone a little different than all the others that are there. And they will usually gravitate to that individual to start tapping to find the reason as to why. And usually in conversations, some seeds will be dropped, and they usually hold their cards pretty close.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
My dad was like one of those guys. Here you are, man, Steve. You're moving through life as well, and you're heading towards college. And again, the process is that we're moving through life, heading to become, quote unquote, an adult, separated from mom and dad and going off on our own world, if you will. When you were looking at college versus work and stuff like that, at this young man's life, if you choose college, Steve, which field of study did you pick, and why did you pick that?
Well, it's interesting. So academically, it never clicked for me, even in elementary school. In my new book, I actually have a chapter in there about when I was in 7th grade and I got put in the special class because my test scores were so bad. And there's a lot of humor to that whole experience, but it was an incredibly learning experience. And then going into high school, I think the last day of high school, I took my Spanish teacher a breakfast biscuit from Hardee's so I could pass, so I wouldn't have an F and fail high school. And so I have to repeat my senior year. So I went to a small college in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And it's called Greensboro College. It had been a former Methodist school, about 800 students. And I love the liberal arts. So I've always been fascinated by history and philosophy and religion, and then how the sciences and math complement those things. And my passion was really around history and philosophy. And my parents had always says, follow your dream, follow your bliss, do what you love. It wasn't me thinking, oh, I'm going to go and study history and that will be a career or a life, or I'm going to study philosophy, or I'm going to learn about these different religions and philosophies of life. It wasn't around that. It was around, hey, I like talking about this. I like thinking about this. So those were some of the things that I studied. And even when I got to college, it took me a couple of years. In fact, I was, after my second year, I was expelled because of poor academic performance. And I had to really go out and figure out if this is what I wanted to do. And I had to live a little bit and have some really interesting experiences. And I did. And when I did come back, I was ready to rock and roll. And I never looked back from that point, and then went on and got a master's in business and organization development, focusing really on how organizations work. But that grounding in kind of that Socratic method of teaching and that liberal arts kind of approach was really interesting, because I've retained a lot of really interesting little bits of knowledge that I didn't know that I had until, you're in a conversation. You're like, oh yeah, that's what Plato was talking about. Yeah. Okay. So it has been an interesting journey of study since then.
When you stepped out, Steve, you mentioned you had stepped out and then you came back in and you took it serious. When you were out there, what were you up to and why did it become serious after you stepped out?
Well, one of the things my parents were also really big on was this idea of responsibility and accountability. So as responsibility, of course, is being able to respond, essentially. So when we're responsible in our own lives, we're responsible for ourselves and to each other. And a manager, I think we're responsible to our employees, but not responsible for them, because that's where accountability comes in. People have to, being responsible for yourself means that you're counted. You stand up. You're like, okay, I'm going to be accountable now. I was not really focused on that. I was just kind of going through the motions, and wherever I'll land, I'll land. But when you get the letter from the dean saying you're gone, your academic performance is so poor, you can't come back to school, it's a kind of a wake up call, because I'm like, wait a second, what am I doing? My parents said, look, you can't live here, but if you do, you need to have a plan, and you need to figure out what you're going to do. And so I sat down and decided to come up with a plan for the year. And so I got a job and went to the gym and started working out, and lost some weight and got all that pizza and beer off of me, and started focusing on feeling good, feeling better physically, saved up some money and went on a 50-day outward bound instructor program, which was really exciting and interesting and challenging and amazing. And that kicked my butt. I did some work and different jobs. And then I had a friend who had come over when I was in high school. He was from Europe. He was from Belgium. His name's Philippe. And so I contacted him, and we went and did some backpacking around Europe for a while as well, which was really great. So that year was a year of discovery. It was a year of sort of testing myself, and it was a year of being intentional, but ultimately it was about being accountable and saying, okay, I need to go ahead, for me to choose to step up now and take the reins of my life.
That's awesome though. Awesome, Steve.
Yeah. So that's where that went.
Yeah. I mean, I love when we become intentional when we do things, because when we live like that, Steve, it really produces outcomes. and lessons, deep, impactful lessons when we approach our days, if you will, like that, where we intentionally move through and gather stuff. It's like the universe is waiting. God is just waiting to release some stuff so you could learn things. You get a lot of micro visions in there about the power of yourself and your relationship to others is really a powerful thing. I encourage anyone, if you have an opportunity to take off a little while and go travel and become intentional. And when you do those type things, the relationships that you meet and you encounter, it really is some of the most powerful things you'll ever come across as an individual on this planet. It's a wonderful lesson. If you can't afford it to do that, do it, man. Go travel, get outside of your culture, go somewhere, get into nature, do something and become what the intention behind it is what gives it the power, if you will. So,
yeah, I love that. I
yeah,
love it. It's funny. After COVID, in the last 2 years, my wife and I have been actually traveling quite a bit. I've been doing writing and some speaking, but we've been traveling through Europe and traveling around the US. I'm in Australia right now, and it's been really great. And we use that term. We call ourselves cuddlewamplers, which is an old English term. Cuddlewample means to travel with great intention to a destination yet unknown. So that's kind of what we feel like we've been doing the last 2 years. We've been digital nomads, really traveling around, and it's been really exciting and fun to rediscover that adventure of meeting new people and experiencing their cultures and their food and having great conversation and making friends, which is, I often find that this is harder the older I get. It's actually harder to make friends than it was when I was a kid. And so that's been really fun to do that. So cuddlewumple is the term we've been using for that whole adventure.
Yeah, that sounds like me too, because that's what I'm doing as well. So here you are,
Nice.
Steve. You're doing things. You're learning. You became, and I love the fact that you talked about being responsible. And a lot of us, I tell people, blaming mom and dad has a expiration date. Blaming others have an expiration date that we need to become individuals and stand up on our own and just begin to stop blaming people and start looking at ourselves. And as you were doing that and exploring the world, Steve, and heading out, going into your future, if you will, at that time, when you kind of like started to settle in, if you will, and you're like, okay, this is where I want to go. What did that look like, Steve, when you made that decision to say, okay, this is where we're going to be squatting for a moment and seeing where this go? And because what I wanted to the listeners that Steve and I are talking is that in our life, we, a lot of times we don't know what we do. We just here and there and tossing around. And then we started focusing, getting a little serious. And those things are time, it happens gradually. It's not boom, and as we become awake to our direction, that's when we start zeroing in. But then when we start doing that, Steve, life is not as beauty as all they think. All hell starts crashing, and then we have to figure it out. But talk to us, Steve, as to when you started pivoting and going, okay, let's put this young man on a course to start really becoming an individual that is going to become a servant as well.
So it's really interesting. I worked with my mom and my brother in some different business ventures, and my brother and I started working as business consultants, primarily working with developing leadership and management type experiences and doing a lot of executive coaching and working with leaders on different levels. And so and then I went and did my master's then around organization development. And so this work of, first of all, kind of cutting my teeth on writing business plans and doing strategic plans for businesses that were transitioning out of old manufacturing into new ways of working, and then working with those teams and groups within those organizations to try to help support them in that change. It was kind of a laboratory for me, because what it did is it grounded some of those principles. And this is where my brother and I started to explore this concept of chaos, because we were working with organizations and of course, then these organizations were going through tremendous change. And, the things that we experience as people in our workplace when we go through significant change, it's the same feeling in the process that we go through when we're in grief.
Mhm.
And so that's a great kind of analogy, because when we're in grief, when we lose someone, we go through these range of emotions. There's kind of different stages we can go through. It doesn't always happen in a cycle. It may just be different stages at different times. But those are the same things that we experience when we're experiencing tremendous change in our lives or in our organizations. So this is where we started to explore this idea of chaos. So the cool thing about this time in my life was it gave me a real grounding for some of the principles. I then went off and did some really different types of things. But as I've come back to those principles, they're serving me well, because I almost had to study it and learn it and then go out and live it, live the real stuff.
Yeah.
In order to recognize it and internalize it. So, but this was a time when we started to develop some of those principles. And one of the core ones that we worked on is called Life is Chaos and All is Well.
Yeah.
And that's the title of my new book. And that's where we really tried to figure out how are folks going through all of this change? How do we go through all this change in our own lives? Trauma, grief, toxic people, bullies, broken relationships, failed marriages, failed businesses. How do we deal with all of that and that be our reality, which it is? That's chaos.
Mhm.
And I mean, look around us today, man. I mean, there's chaos is just the state, right? It's the state that we're in a world, in our lives. But then how do we live into the all is well at the same time? How do we experience true joy? So it was at that time when I think philosophically and academically or mentally, kind of the stuff in the head got really clear for me. And I understood it here. Yeah, this makes sense. I mean, I've studied to have this strong kind of liberal arts background. I get the whole, I talked about my dad being like Buddha. Sure, I understand what these different philosophies are like. I understand the practice of leadership. This makes sense to me. This is cool stuff. So part of the consulting was to use that and to work with different people and share some of what I had been learning and help to enlighten them. But it was always still up here. It was the discipline, the disciple, the teaching part, the learning part. It was the head. I had not yet gone through that journey of internalization, because that's where you have to question that stuff. You have to go through the fire, you go through the grief, the trauma, the wild stuff. And when you do, then you have choices you make. You can either embrace it, or you can ignore it, or you can run away, or you can go into something else. And I chose to embrace it, because why not? And it's kind of fun.
You have to go through the lab. I tell people there's the theory, in class we study the theory, and that's all good. But we have to go out there and start getting into the lab and applying the theories and making it into a part of us, so that when we come through, as we talked about earlier, Steve, when we come through, it's integrated into our body, into our being. When it transitions from the mind down into that heart, they say, and that transition usually only comes and happens when our world is upside down, as you said. That chaos will have an opportunity to put you in touch with the inner beings of who we truly are. Psychologists will call that individual the subconscious mind. In religion, we know him as the soul of the man, and so forth. And so we start tapping into that individual. Talk to us, Steve, as to, you got all this head knowledge, as you said, and now chaos is going to visit and knock on your door. In the beginning of our conversation, you talked about surrendering. And surrendering is not an easy thing to do, number one, because as a human being, we want to show everybody that we can do it,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
we will do everything and anything, Steve, to make sure that we try everything. And then there's one point we come where we have done all that we know, and we are broken to the piece where we don't know if we're going to be able to get up the next second. And right there, Steve, when one surrenders, it is probably the most powerful thing you'll ever do in your life. But to get there is where the fun is. So talk to us as you are learning the transition where everything makes sense, but then it has to drop. From here, it has to drop. It has to come to this level whereby now it's going to integrate into your being, and now it's merges and it is you. Talk to us, Steve, as to that progression, if you will, and how did it land when you came out and you were a whole? It becomes Steve.
I think this is one of the things that has been so exciting about this last 2 years is my wife and I have been out on this journey and even while we were on the journey, we experienced profound chaos. I mean, just like foundational, remove like some major blocks of what we thought we knew and what we thought was real and what we thought was good. And it rocks you to your core. So what happens, of course, is while we're moving into this place where we're able to reflect, and we talked about early on in the conversation, we talked about how we like to reminisce and remember those things around our childhood. And of course, remembering is really about putting it back together. And the opposite of remembering is to dismember, to pull things apart. And we spend our lives getting dismembered, I think, until we reach that point that you're talking about. And I think we do that because we're not able to embrace it. It's counterintuitive to surrender in the face of all this chaos. It's counterintuitive to let go because we want to fight it. We want to protect ourselves, our family. We want to hold on. We want to live. We want to focus. We want to achieve. We want to win. We want to be successful.
Yes.
But the paradox comes when we realize and let go of this notion that those things are exclusive to the chaos. And as you alluded to, the chaos is what allows those things to happen. Because A, they are the catalyst for us to have the flip side. You can't have one without the other. But B, by letting go and experiencing that, then the opportunity, because we open ourselves up. When we're letting go, we're opening up. That's when the love and kindness comes in. That's when hope comes in. That's when excitement and passion and energy and a new type of focus enters our world. So for me, that journey is not one that I've arrived at. What I've been able to do, though, where I am now in my life, I can recognize that, hey, life is chaos. And you know what? Tomorrow I'm going to experience some more. But how am I going to choose to respond now compared to the way I chose to respond 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or whatever? So now I'm choosing to say, hey, it's real. It's there. It does not define me. It doesn't. My resilience, my awareness, my practice of loving others, myself, are my armor and my shield in the midst of this chaos and will protect me. And the things that define me are much richer and deeper. So, but it's there every day. So part of the realization is that I'm not going to kind of end up on some mountaintop like some stoic, just with one with the world, or some kind of Jedi in a temple. I'm not going to be that person. And I don't think anybody really gets to that point. Maybe some people do, but the chaos is with us and it's a companion on this journey. And unless we learn to embrace it and realize that it doesn't define us, we're defined by something richer. And even though we're in a world of anger and hate and fear constantly, and I struggle with fear and anxiety, but even though we're in that world, that we're bombarded with it, it can't win against the other, which is love. And that's the thing that I've learned. It doesn't matter how strong it is. It will either kill itself out or something else will eat it. Love is the only sustainable, true force that can't be defeated, it can't be conquered. And so why not have that as your ally? Why not go through each day with that rather than the other? And that's a choice. We can choose that.
Yeah, it is. Tell people we are being programmed all day long. What program you choose to program is your choice. We have, when we're coming up as young individuals, We have a couple of programmers, the big ones that are there that we can see: society, and there are all the rules within that. We have religion, educational system, corporate America, all these entities. But like you mentioned, Steve, those are the ones that we don't talk about. They have the anxiety. We have all these other dark energies, if you will, that are programming us, the less than programmers. But there's also the other side. Steve alluded to many of them. Love, which is the foundation, man. You put that into your being and respond from that. And you are programming yourself on a daily basis to respond from that location. It's amazing when anxiety and all the other things come, which they come. We are human beings, man. We're not this super race. When it comes, it is not one that will cause us to go and hide and so forth. It may just slap us one day, a couple of minutes, and you jump back and you go, wait a minute. But then when you come back to that baseline of loving yourself and loving others, that's where the choice comes in, man. And life begins to become sweet because you understand every second, every minute means something. And when you get there, it's a good place to be, man. It's a good place to be.
It really is. And I like what you said is that you really have to recommit to that every day. And this is where these practices come in. And I mean, people who know me kind of laugh when I talk about journaling and meditation, because I was like, even in my adult life, it was like, meditate, really? You want me to sit there and meditate? I mean, come on. And I used to laugh at it, it's this kind of new age stuff. It's, gosh, people, and it's kind of like someone who's into that. How do you know they're into that? Because they talk about it, because it's important to them. It's kind of like that joke. How do you know someone's a vegan? Well, they'll tell you. It's the same kind of thing. So I would meet people and say, "Oh man, do you meditate?" And no, not really. But it's amazing when you start to be mindful. And I started there. I started to think about what are the things I can do to be mindful, and it might just be breathing every morning and doing some breath work and focusing on letting go of some of that anxiety, and then reflecting on it in my journal and writing about it. And I've been doing this mindfulness meditation around gratitude recently. And, it's one of those things where, again, because I was in my brain, I was in my analytical Steve, I was in my critical, judgmental Steve, which is important. It's an important part of who I am, because it's a part of who I am. So it's important. But rather than the understanding and rather than the possibility and what is this thing, I would always look at those practices as kind of whatever. But now I'm doing them, I see how they move the needle every day in my life. They give me that, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm centered, I feel good. I know fear and anxiety is right there. I see it. It's going to get me. I know that toxic person is going to be there when I get to work. I know that this issue is still there and unresolved. I know that my stuff with my partner, this argument that we're having, is still there. I know the real stuff is there. But what I'm able to do is go into it and, as you said, embrace some of those core things: gratitude, love, and kindness. And that's where the resilience thing comes in, because then we can experience it and we start to become elastic in that. And again, going back to, it doesn't define us, this stuff. But when we try to fight it, when we try to think our way out of it or maneuver our way out of it and be clever, or when we try to run away from it, or when we try to deny that it exists, or when we try to blame other people rather than holding ourselves accountable for our own choices, then it wins, and it'll win every time. We can't defeat the chaos because it's smarter than us. But when we don't put our energy into that and say, yeah, it's real, but I'm going to put my energy into this, we'll win every time, because we then have a different strength that it can't compete with.
Yeah.
And I truly believe it, because I've experienced it in my life every single day. But as you said, Ken, we have to commit ourselves each morning to that, or we have to be intentional about that, those practices. And so it is exciting when you start to learn those things.
Yeah, you have to be The key in life, I can tell people, in anything, if you want to lose weight, if whatever you want to do, the key to the whole thing is becoming a disciple. Becoming a disciple. What is that? Disciple. Becoming disciplined. Um, and when you become disciplined and implement disciplined thinking into your life, it'll change your life. Steve mentioned so many powerful tools: resilience, love, meditation, journaling. These are powerful tools that you can bring into your space. Steve, I was in corporate America. I was a director of marketing, sales and marketing, statewide director of marketing for an HMO at the time. And I have my staff. I'm a single dad with 4 boys. My world is like spinning out of control. And I was introduced into meditation. Meditation, Steve, changed everything. I would meditate in the morning before it became such a habit that even my children knew that I had friends would be coming and I would be in my meditation location and they said, Dad is on up, you cannot disturb him. He's meditating. My kids got to that level because to me, I won my battles in my meditation before I got into my office, before I sat in front of everyone, because I controlled me, Steve. I learned how to control me. So when those that are in the office that are going to come and disturb your peace, if you will, there is this force that you have put in place, if you will, while you were in your meditation, and the breathing and the breath. I tell people, breath is the bridge between the natural and the supernatural. And when you visit the supernatural through that bridge of breathing, and when you come back into that world and you step out and you go to your corporate world or wherever, your family, it's, to me, Steve, it was like everything outside of me was slow motion. And
That's
it
a
would
great way
come
to
and I
describe it.
give me the time, because it's so slow motion is the best way I could explain it, that the conversations and everything was in slow motion, and I was able to decipher and make decisions, quality decisions, as it's been coming to me, and they're talking to me, and and it changed my life. I became different.
That's such a great, it's such a great story, Ken, and it's such a great experience you had. I love that it becomes slower for me. It's almost like I'm on a hill watching the car wreck rather than in the car wreck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by watching it, I can see the experience. I can look at it from different angles, and I can get a perspective that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
And I think that's what that meditation and journaling, reflecting, and even then action. This is one of the things I talk about in the book. Each chapter I end with some life hacks. The first one is mindfulness. The second one is a journaling life hack. And the third one is action. Because I think this is where we got to remind ourselves, once we've put that armor on for the day, we've done our mindfulness on our meditation, we've reflected on it. The next one is looking for opportunities to put that love into action every day. I have one of the things I do is, the 24 expressions of gratitude in 24 hours. What can I do to the people in my life, or set some targets around things like that? I could just be, buying someone a cup of coffee, or telling someone they look nice today, or wishing someone to have a good day, or supporting someone the best you can. So those are the little things that, when we take what we're learning in this journey, and once we discover that all is well, and we can live into the all is well, we can live into the hope and the joy and the excitement, and that we start to learn to love ourselves and others, there's nothing more exciting than putting that into action every day. And that's what I love, is looking for opportunities to do that.
Yeah. To live a life of gratitude, I invite anyone and everyone to try it. Step out of your worry, if you will, your anxiety for a minute. Just step out and become grateful of the fact that you're alive. Pick small things and change your mind. And when you change that, what you're doing is changing your state.
Yes, you are.
Gratitude will assist you to change your state. And when you change your state, you will change your energy and your confession and all of those things that helps to create your world. And gratitude is one of the most powerful expression a human being can get involved in on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And when you do that, when you practice the gratitude and you change your state, the chaos starts to melt away.
Yeah.
Because it knows it can't latch on. It knows it can't be there. And I know I'm talking about, it is a kind of an interesting perspective here, but I really believe that. I believe that chaos can't latch on to us when we're really in that zone of love and kindness and gratitude, because there's nothing for it to hold on to. It can't get its hooks into us. I have a friend, and I tell this story in the book, Amanda, and she's had a really traumatic life. I mean, her father left when she was a little girl, and her mother got a new partner who was incredibly abusive. And, she tells a story where she was, he stuck a shotgun in her mouth and told her that, he was going to shoot her and kill her mom and her brothers, the beatings and the horrible abuse. And then even when she grew up and got married, it wasn't physical abuse, but there was emotional abuse. And she described it as like she would put on this heavy woolen coat, and it had these hooks in it, and she would put it on during the chaos, and that's what the chaos felt like. And she would put it on because that's what she had to do. And she almost felt alive in the chaos, but it was painful and it was traumatic and it was horrible. And through an amazing journey, and she's a really amazing person, very, very intelligent, a beautiful person, she was able to, and through this practice of love and kindness and gratitude, she was able to let go of that coat with those hooks on it and replace it with this light, colorful, with bells and shimmering coat that she can dance in. And that's why she describes her life now, is that she can dance through the trauma. Now, those memories are still there. They're still a part of her journey. They help inform who she is, but they don't define who she is. She defines that every day. And when I meet people like that, I'm like, man, that's the good stuff, isn't it?
That's the good stuff.
That's the good stuff.
Guys, you've been listening to Steve and I, and we're going to provide everything, all the links that you can get to him so you can buy the books, so you can hear and read of some of those stories that he's talking about. And I've told you within those walls that we call, the covers, house wisdom, knowledge, and insights that have the ability to jump and leap inside of you and change your life. Why do I say that? Because it's happened to me a million times while I'm reading a book. And there's a way to come to a book. And I always tell you to get relaxed, center yourself, create a space by which this is your time. And when you read the book, you're having a one-on-one conversation with Steve. You're having an in-depth conversation with this author in there. And as you're engaging in the conversation, when you come ready, your favorite tea, coffee, whatever it is, the light is, set up in your space. What did you do? You change your state, and you're coming with a state of expectation. And when you're coming in with a state of expectation, Steve, you always get something. And so I tell people, come expecting and you will receive your answers. It is that simple. We try to stay busy, and that's where we lose it. Come expecting when you walk in gratitude. Come expecting when you walk in love. Come expecting. That is intentional, as we talked about earlier, and you'll see changes in your life, and it'll be a grand journey that you will have, and you'll be like Steve and his wife, and traveling and enjoying themselves and enjoying the self and others. Steve, man, it's been good. I had a good time, man. I just want to tell you
too.
that.
Thank you, Ken. It's really been great talking to you.
Yeah, this has been fun, guys. I feel like I could talk to Steve for many, many more hours and just
Likewise.
keep getting deeper and deeper in each level of our conversation. But we want you guys to get familiar with him and get into his space. And again, we're going to provide everything, man. Steve, it's 2025. We're in February. I think it's moving so fast already. You are standing on a stage. You have a mic. That mic is plugged into every human being on this planet. This is your opportunity. God has created a venue where you are able to talk to us all, to release your insight at this time in the history of mankind. Steve, what would you say to us?
I think I would go right back with what we started with, Ken, and that's all the forces of the universe conspired to create you, and therefore you are worthy. And so take that with you.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is powerful advice. And what I suggest that you do is meditate. Let that be your mantra for a few days, every morning when you get up. Allow it to be your mantra and see what it does to you. Steve, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.